Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's the Black Psychologist Podcast. We are back like we never left. Episode 44, I think we're up to. And
Oh,
we have, 42, 44. And we have quite a bit to talk about today. Some very important topics to get to. And we appreciate everybody being here. Could be anywhere in the world, but you're here listening and watching us, and we appreciate that so much. I am one half of your humble and gracious host, Dr. Kyle Osborne. He is I, and I am him. And you guys know who have been riding with us. I'm never alone. We got Jersey keeps on making it, others keep on faking it, Philly keeps creating it, and Dr. J keeps on taking it. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jason Coleman, what's going on, good brother?
what's going on, bro? Man, I can't complain. Just the weather is up and down. You're crazy in Philly, man. It was snowing 2 days ago. So that's crazy. And then it's been a lot in the news. So definitely got a lot to talk about. But episode 44, that's big.
Right.
Just want to thank everybody hanging in there with us. Watching us grow, supporting us every week. We appreciate the support.
Absolutely. Go ahead. And Jay, well, of course, shout that wardrobe you got on, bro. Go ahead, put that out there, sir.
Well, always we always want to promote, positive mental health, specifically, prioritizing your mental health, coping skills, and all that good stuff every day. So, if you want to, support in that way, shopmentalhealthclothing.com, definitely appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And absolutely, guys, we definitely appreciate to reiterate what Jay said. We appreciate the love, we appreciate the support. So continue to subscribe, continue to hit that like button, continue to leave your comments. We love the appreciation and we love all the feedback. We love all of it. All right. Also, want to give as we get started, want to give a salute and acknowledgement to brother Quest Love. You know, we're from Philly, we do our thing, we're from the tri-state area, so
Oh, you
want
won
to
an
give a shout
Oscar,
out to
right?
Quest Love. What you say?
Didn't he win an Oscar or something?
Yes, he did. So he Quest Love actually won an Oscar for best not best director, best documentary this past couple days ago at the Oscars. He won for his the 2021 film Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution could not be televised. And it was dope, man. It's a real dope concert that took place, I think, in New York. They had, I think, Nina Simone perform, my man from the Temptations performed. Like, it was a good documentary. So for anybody who hasn't had an opportunity to check out that documentary, it was a great film that Questlove put together. Happy it won the award. He's a crazy talented dude representing Philly. So absolute salute to him and the work that he put out. Also want to, of course, get congratulations to Will Smith, another Philly native, of course, winning the best leading man and leading role award. Fifth African American to win that award in that category in all the years, however long the Oscars has been going on. Fifth African American to win that award. So I want to absolutely give him his props for a great performance in the movie King Richard. If you haven't seen that, dope film, check it out. Unfortunately, even though he won that award, that's not the talk, right? That's not the big news about it. And for those that, if you've been living underneath a rock, or you haven't, you've had your head in the sand the past couple of days, there were some other different things going on with Will. So, for those that aren't aware of what took place prior to Will Smith getting his award for Best Lead Actor, um, while prior to him winning his award, Chris Rock, right? Chris Rock, we all know and are aware of Chris Rock. Great comedian, years in the game, great actor. So while he was getting ready to present the award for Best Documentary that Questlove won, Chris Rock, of course, in true comedic fashion, was doing a bit, doing some jokes, and as he's done in the past, he's picking out some people in the crowd. And prior to him getting ready to present the award, he singled out Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith, who were sitting up front, and he makes a quick jab at her, and he says, Jada, I love you. Can't wait to see you in G.I. Jane 2, right? And
Mhm.
so the joke was a reference at her hairstyle that she's rocking. So she's, bald, or it's a close cut. I'm not sure what the ladies call it or what the exact term is, but she's wearing, close cut. She suffers from alopecia, which is an autoimmune disease, which one of the symptoms is causes you to lose your hair. She's been, been vocal about that for the past 2 or 3 years. And so he made that joke. She didn't find it funny. If you watch the footage, she didn't find it funny at all. She kind of made like a real grimacing face. And so the camera cuts away from her and Will, and then it cuts to back to Chris Rock, who's on stage. And then Will Smith makes his way up to the stage, and
Mhm.
he puts his paws on Chris, man. He pimp smacks him, to kind of keep this more G rated, you know. Yeah, Chris said it himself. He said, look, he slapped the shit out of me. And
Right.
so after Will did that, it was literally one slap, and then he went back to his seat. And then he starts yelling at Chris, keep my name or keep my wife's name out your effing mouth. Says it again. He's yelling, keep my wife's name out your effing mouth. Um, and it was a shocking moment, man. You know, ugh, um, I'm gonna be honest, Jay. I didn't like any minute of this, man. I really didn't.
Okay.
This was tough to watch, just for the reason that you know um it was involving two greats, right? Two greats in their respective areas of entertainment. We have Chris Rock, who is a legend in comedy, and you have Will Smith, who is I think one of the best actors of this generation. um and so, like, to see it unfold in this manner, it was tough, man. It really is. These are both two artists that I've paid admission to see, whether it be in the movies or even if it's stand up, whatever the circumstances may be. Two talented people, man, two family oriented, two professionals. So this was tough for me, to actually see it happen. And as we were talking a little bit before we got on, like, I thought this was a joke. Like, I thought this was a skit or a bit or something. Um, and it wasn't. It was very real. It was and so, you know, um, I can appreciate, Will, you know, protecting his wife, right? I can totally understand and I can totally appreciate that, as men, and just as our roles are to be providers and to be protectors. And so whether it's your wife, your sister, your mother, your daughter, you're gonna protect them. Um, at the same time, I also feel like he was wrong for doing this situation. The way that and manner that, he reacted was totally inappropriate. And, if looking at it, I feel like there was something else going on. Like, I don't know Will, I don't know the family, never had conversations with him, but it appears, just kind of taking into consideration that act, the overwhelm of with emotion that he said, and him just kind of yelling back and forth at Chris, and even when he accepted the award, it's very emotional, very intense.
Mhm.
And for me, there's something else that's going on there, right? I feel like it's not just, maybe it wasn't just a joke, maybe it was something else that's going on,
Well, Will Smith.
yeah, in his life, right? Or even with the family. Like, you never know what's going on behind closed doors. I mean, the alopecia, it's a medical condition. So I can imagine that's not, it's probably a sensitive, topic for Jada. And the last thing you want to see is your family member in any type of pain or hurt, or especially when you're hitting a sore topic. But yeah, I feel like there's something else going on there. Like, there's
I
it's
want
the
to.
same way how we talk about, like, the iceberg, like the anger iceberg that we've talked about with our clients. What you just see it
Hmm.
is the tip, right? The tip is usually like that, whatever that explosive action that's a result of the anger or frustration. But below, there's a lot more going on. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of what I gathered from this, or at least that's what it appeared to be from, just kind of looking at it from a different perspective, is that, yeah, there's something else going on there. Like, the slap was the slap, but there's something else more behind it. And it just sucks, Jay, because it overshadows the whole situation, man. It overshadows a triumphant win for him. Like, we should be talking
Mhm.
more about, like, he won for best actor, right? That should be the story. That should be the headline. And instead, it's overshadowed with this action. You know what I mean? With what took place. Um, and it's a shame, man. But I hold him I hold him responsible, because it didn't have to go that particular route. What you got?
Um, I mean, first off, obviously, I was surprised, like everybody else. I surprised to see it happen, right? Surprised in terms of who it involved. I ain't really gonna go down to, it's a shame that it happened because it overshadows the award. Listen, nobody is gonna think about this night anymore and think about him winning that prestigious award. That's out the window, right?
Right.
What people are gonna think about is, you know, um, him coming on stage and smacking Chris Rock when he wasn't a part of the festivities, right? Um, so we talking about that, and just strictly about that. Um, just to get kind of to it, obviously it was an inappropriate reaction. Obviously it was an overreaction, right? I say obviously, and I'm really kind of saying that I really gotta take that back, right? Because it's not obvious to everybody. So we'll get to that in a second. But
Right.
but the first point I guess I'll make is that comedians roast people, right? Some people gonna like the jokes, some people gonna not like the jokes. When you come to the Oscars, when you come out in public like that, right? You have to expect to be roasted, right? Um, think about how many times now, whether you like the joke or not, because whether the joke is personally insulting to you, a lot of times is going to depend on the person, right? So we got to think about how many times Jay-Z has had to sit in the audience and think about and think about jokes about Beyonce, whether it's because of her beauty or whether it's something about somebody saying she can sing or can't sing. Either way, right? Um, we've had to sit there and watch people make these type of comments, watch her facial expressions, and watch him sit in his seat and support her, provide her with support as her husband, right? I'll give you another example. Remember Def Comedy Jam, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we know Chris Rock comes out of this. Um, I'm not saying that tree necessarily, but he comes from that era of black comedians. So we've seen it over and over again at the Apollo, at Def Comedy Jam, different places where you may pay $200, $300, $500 to come sit front row with your girl, right?
And
Put on your best outfit, right?
and it's a risk.
Right. And you know a comedian can come and might talk about her wig, might come talk about her outfit, might come
Yep.
talk about your shoes, might come talk about your weight, her weight, your skin tone, everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
now, just give me a second, and I'll wrap it up. Now, imagine it's me or you, or person A in the front seat. We don't pay $300 for these seats, right? So we don't have disposable income like Will Smith, and they insult our girl, or your wife or whatever. To say the worst thing possible. Everybody in the audience is laughing. Some people are not, and you get up and smack them. What happens after that?
You're catching a
Are,
nice little
are,
salt charge.
right? Do you have a whole bunch of hashtags talking about protect your wife and stand up for your wife and all this other stuff? I mean, so again, I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy, right? People like Will Smith, right? So you have a lot of people coming to his aid, but I gotta be honest with you. I don't really see the debate about what he did across the board. I see it like within culture,
Mm-hmm.
right? I see a split reaction within our culture, right? And I see a certain subject of a certain sub segment of people in our culture who are defending things that he's doing on the basis of this is how men are supposed to defend their wife, right? And what I would propose to people is that you can't have it both ways. So you can't sit here and complain, right, about why teenage boys cannot sort out their differences with words, right? And then sit on your couch and applaud two men settling their differences with one smacking the other. Because one thing I will tell you is that there's something ironic about this situation, because if you were to take these two males who happen to be African American out of this situation and replace it with both of their wives up there slapping each other, doesn't feel as right, right? Replace it with Tom Cruise and Bradley Cooper smacking each other. Can't really see it, right? And we can go. So why is it that it is a debate about why it could be appropriate? Why? Because there's some element of our culture that still wants to normalize aggression for us. And it may seem like I'm going too far, but no, I do not think I am. Because you take the race and the gender of these men away and replace them with any other guys that you know of another race, another gender, and it's not funny anymore, right? It's just assault on television, right?
No, you're not going too far, Jay. You know why? Because this has become an endless cycle, and unfortunately, like you said, this type of the aid and support that Will is receiving for, oh yeah, he's doing what he was, what a man is supposed to do. This is what permeates and reinforces toxic masculinity. And that's what this is, Jay. I'm gonna call it what it is. So you're not going too far, right? It's in a situation where, it was violence, right? There was a victim and there was an aggressor. And that's what it is, right? What I saw, and again, I can understand, I perfectly can identify with a man protecting his family when it's a situation when one of your family members is being attacked or is a danger,
right,
safety issue, right? But that wasn't this. This was a situation where you had someone that was determined to protect his wife, okay? And then he used a slap to express his anger and his aggression. That's what he did. Now, aggression is a natural emotion. So let's not get it misconstrued and say that, oh, well, Dr. Kyle is saying that you shouldn't be angry, you shouldn't be frustrated. No, that's a perfectly natural emotion that we're all going to express and feel and experience because we're all human. However, it's a situation more where you're using that aggression and you're choosing physical violence to handle that situation. That's toxic masculinity. And when people are in here saying, yeah, he should have did, that's what happens when you say stuff. No, that's not what happens, because there's a different way and different manner, a more appropriate manner that he could have handled that situation. So,
and if we're being honest, it's a little bit disingenuous in pumping Will Smith up like he's a big man, right? Because let's be honest, and I'm going to use you as an example, but I'll substitute myself. Well,
go for it, baby.
An example. There is a difference, right, between I go to work at 8:30, right? There's a difference between bumping into me in the waiting room and slapping me, right? Slapping me. I'm dead serious. And bumping into me at 7:00 at night in the Target parking lot and trying to slap me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Meaning, like, Chris Rock is on stage hosting the Oscars. What is he supposed to fight Will Smith?
And that's another thing. Like,
you understand?
What is that supposed to happen? People are like on so many different comments, like, oh, he should have did this. What is he supposed to do? What's his response?
So what he really did was what cowards do, right? He smacked him, walked away. The problem is, and I'm gonna be very honest, I'm trying to figure out who allowed him to sit in the audience for the rest of the show. Because so again, right?
That's what I'm saying. So many questions, bro.
And again, this is why, like, you're talking to people who don't really play in that arena, right? These are the people that are kind of trying to ratchet this up, because let's play this out. So everybody wants to ratchet up Will Smith because he's a man, because he slapped him, right? So by the rules of the jungle, Chris Rock deserves to get his get back, right? So Will Smith is allowed to sit in the front row, and Chris Rock goes backstage and does something more drastic to get his get back, right? Now,
Right.
what do you think everybody is? Now everybody is up in arms, right? If something bad happens to Will Smith, because their guy won and then he lost, right? And that's how that's the problem with reasoning emotionally.
Mhm.
Eventually, it doesn't make sense, because when the rules of the jungle and toxic masculinity work for people, then cool. Vigilante justice is cool, right? But what people don't understand, the reason why the day after you see people that are his friends, quote unquote, Black Bradley Cooper, Jim Carrey, all these people saying they're outraged, is because, see, you can romanticize that stuff within culture, right? But everybody else, it's different when they watch it on television and it happens at the BET Awards because Suge Knight and Young Buck is fighting. But when it happens at the Oscars and it's 2 feet away from them, all of the pop people that are in popular culture wearing Vera Wang and all this other stuff, they get scared. So Will Smith is going to be doing a lot of apologizing, whether it be on camera, off camera, to a lot of people for a long time, because a lot of people in that auditorium felt very unsafe.
Mm-hmm. You can see it on their faces. Everybody was uncomfortable, and that was another aspect of things, is that, you know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm in Will Smith's shoes. And however, he's been in different situations where he's been the butt of jokes, where people come at him, come at his wife, and so on and so forth. There's a manner, the same way how we would sit in front of one of our clients that would experience the same similar situation. It's a, what could you have done differently? Right? You're at a certain point. These aren't just young kids that are, you know, fresh off the block. They're not just coming, they're not just getting their feet wet in the entertainment industry. This isn't their first Oscars, right?
Right.
Will Smith is has been around the block. He's been in this industry for a long time. And so the same situation of even saying like, hey, I'm going to address this with him backstage, right? I'm going to handle this situation because we're gentlemen, right? We've made it to a certain stature at this point where we know how to handle situations, criticism, jokes, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm not sitting here saying, you know, that, hey, it was a good joke. It was good and you know, and done in good taste. All right. Because absolutely, I don't know if Chris Rock was aware that, you know, Jada had
Right.
alopecia and so on and so forth. So I mean, for anyone to make fun of someone that has a medical condition, especially we're talking about a black woman, hair, any of those different things are touchy situations, right? So I understand that. And maybe it's a situation of that Rock shouldn't have made that particular joke. However, when you, like you said, when the toxic masculinity comes into place and it's just like, oh, got to get my get back, right? I gotta, you know, do something. You know, I need to protect my wife at that moment. I'm gonna use this particular type of justice. No, that's not the way it handles. And what I didn't like,
But
and
if you
I'm gonna
go
be,
ahead,
I'm gonna
yeah, go
be
ahead.
honest also with the apology thing. I'm not gonna get too much into his apology was disingenuous or not. However, the same manner, like he just released an apology via probably his publicist, I imagine, you know, and it was,
Mhm.
you know, he shared it and, you know, and it went out and people were able to read it on different websites and such. But he got up there and was talking about love. He was talking about, you know, his spirituality and being a protector, so on and so forth. No, okay. You don't get a chance to go up there after you smack somebody and then start talking about love, right? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna say what you can and can't say,
Yeah.
but it just comes across disingenuous. And then when you're gonna release the apology, no, if you were gonna release apology, you make the apology in the same manner you say it to someone's face. You say it to Chris, right? Don't have a letter that sit here and says, "Oh, well, I apologize to Chris. I apologize to so and so." No, because there's another thing. You've put your not only yourself, you've put family members, people you're responsible for, another vulnerable and compromising situation. They were interviewing his mom, who's still in Philly, and she's sitting there dumbfounded, like, I don't know, like I didn't raise him
Right.
like this. This is surprise. So your actions, as we know, Jay, when anything takes place like this, has a reaction, right? There are consequences. There's other different effects, and now you've put in other people that it's not fair to them because now they're being bombarded with questions, right? Your kids are going to be bombarded with questions. All these other different aspects and people that you are associated with you are going to be questioned based off of your actions. So this was an impulsive thing, and I'm not going to sit here and say that, this is a representation of who Will is, because he's not. I mean, I don't know him personally, but
Mhm.
Will, as we've seen in the public, has carried himself very well. He's always been a champion for positive Black representation in film and media. He's handled himself like he's the paragon of professionalism. However, his actions this past Sunday didn't reflect that. And so again, I imagine that there's something else going on there. But despite what he's experiencing and whatever's going on in the household and what's happening with him emotionally, psychologically, that doesn't warrant you going up on stage and
Well,
smacking Chris.
well, I'll say this, and I got a question for you, just going off what you just said, right? And now we kind of just speculating, right? Going a little bit more away from what we was just talking about, which is kind of the fact that happened, right? I really do think it's a lot more going on, right? And the only reason why I say that is just being familiar with, in terms of popular culture and, the last year and a half to 2 years, in terms of Will Smith being the butt of a lot of jokes in a lot of circles, right?
Right.
So my question to you is, and then just on a popular culture, and I'm not saying like whether it's my conclusion, but just his manhood being questioned, just in a lot of circles, right? Openly, and
Yeah.
and him being the butt of jokes. Him, whose honor do you think he was defending or offended by? What do you think he was defending, his own honor or Jada Pinkett Smith's? Because I'm confused. I'm very confused. Because you hear people on social media saying that he was arguing, defending his wife's honor, right? Which was be confusing to me on a lot of levels, right? I could understand if he was if he was defending his own bruised ego and he got caught up in the moment, right? As a culmination of what everybody has been saying about him over the last couple of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can't understand him being offended by somebody making a joke about his wife. I can't understand him defending her honor, because not that she doesn't deserve it, but because you have celebrity, right? Scrutiny, right? And then you have the level of scrutiny that she has opened herself up to by choice. It's a whole different level than even normal celebrity scrutiny, right? You have celebrity scrutiny, and then she has opened the door to her home, their relationship, and their bedroom to the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even when the public reaction was, for a lot of people at least, that this man is being emasculated and humiliated, she continued to do it, which is her choice entirely. But what I'm saying is, and the alopecia thing was public knowledge that she had also shared, right? So it's hard to kind of go from being that open to not expecting for Chris Rock or a comedian to being that sensitive. You understand? Those two things don't equate. So for that reason, red table talk and all of that wouldn't exist if Jada Pinkett was that sensitive, in my opinion. So that is him defending his own bruised ego, and I'm speculating, but it looks like a man who's saying like, yo, I'm tired of being a butt of everybody's jokes for the last 2 years.
Could be.
That's my humble opinion.
I'll point out and highlight an observation that I saw. When he makes the joke, right? When Chris makes the joke, it cuts over
I know
to
what
him,
you about to say.
right?
Go ahead.
Jada was obviously and clearly uncomfortable, didn't like the joke. I saw Will in true typical Will fashion, because Will's great with media.
Right.
He's a veteran in this. Will is joking, like he's not joking, but he's laughing and he's nodding his head like, okay, all right, right? It cuts away, right? And it goes back to Chris, who's on stage. I think at that moment, just speculating, right? I think Will looks at Jada and is just like, damn, I gotta do something. Okay. I gotta go home with her. She's not feeling this joke right now. And like you said, the bruised ego, a lot of different things building up. He takes upon himself and goes on stage because it's one of those. And if anybody's been in a relationship, right? if something's going on with your lady, you laugh. And you know what I mean? Good. She was not in favor of this joke from the very beginning, bro. Like you saw her face turn, like, and he's nodding, like he's getting ready to play it off, like, okay. And within that short period of time, it went from him nodding and kind of playing it off to now I'm walking on stage. Right. It escalated very quickly. And I don't know if it was like, this was out of self-preservation. Cause it's like, yo, I gotta go home. He's making a joke. I can't be sitting here laughing at this. Right. But let me ask you this, right? If that's Jerry Seinfeld making that joke, do you think Will goes up there and puts hands on him?
No.
Okay.
If
it's The Rock or Jason Momoa, is he going up there? Right. If it's Larry David.
No.
So, and that was another thing. I try not to go too deep or too dark and too down the rabbit hole, but I'm thinking like, all right, he's going after Chris because it's Chris, right? Chris doesn't. Right. Yeah. It's personal. And also Chris doesn't pose like a physical threat, right? He's also not white. Okay. Because could you imagine what that'd be? Like, I don't think he does that to Jerry Seinfeld or Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel,
because he would have been in cuffs.
Correct.
I'm not saying that that's what I want to see happen to him.
No.
But understand where we are at, right? Understand where we were at, right? On the radio. Right? Peter Rosenberg is on the radio on Michael K talking about, and Chris Rock would never press charges on him because he's from Brooklyn. Do you know what that would do to his image? Right? So think about it. Right? The perception is that a black man can get assaulted on national television. You already know if it happened to Jerry Seinfeld, is a claim being filed. Of course, right? That's what we would expect, right? But you have personalities on the radio saying that Chris Rock, who's probably 50 years old, right? If he feels like what Will Smith did to him was embarrassing enough to take a check, right? People are questioning his credibility. That's how far gone we are in terms of the culture, right? And you have people who are really on social media debating about whether or not it was appropriate, but they will get up tomorrow morning and send their kids to school and say, baby, if somebody talks to you and insults you, tell the teacher.
I know. I have.
Right? And this is not a good example. It's not a good example, but I'm just talking about, remember during the presidential, I think it was during the, it might have been during the election, right? Mm-hmm. Donald Trump used the bully pulpit to call Ted Cruz's wife ugly, right? Yeah. By these standards, the next time Ted Cruz saw Donald Trump in the Senate chamber, what was supposed to happen? On site, right?
On site, yeah.
Come on.
He was supposed to according to those rules, he should have went up there and did it then.
Right. But again, if we were to use that example, people would say it's ridiculous, right? So why isn't it ridiculous with them?
I agree. And I got to give Chris a lot of credit.
We couldn't picture their wives up there slapping the hell out of each other, right? Because again, and I was talking to my moms about this. Think about it, bro. Michelle Obama is a personal hero of mine, right? Mm-hmm. There's a reason why she either championed or came up with the phrase, they go low, we go high, right? That sets her up and sets up girls and people everywhere to be able to walk away with grace, right? So somebody can walk up to Michelle Obama and say the most reprehensible thing ever, right? And she can turn to them and say you're ignorant, or not say it, or not dignify it with an answer and walk away. And she has done what? Gone high, right? Look on social media and see what we are telling the black men to do. And I'm just being honest.
No, and that's what I'm saying. It just reinforces this toxic masculinity. That's I want a man that's doing so. Even some
Toxic
of our, I
masculinity
want a man. No,
only
that's
for,
not like there's a difference
only
between
for
protecting
some
you
of
and
us, though.
safety.
Toxic masculinity is only for some of us,
Right.
because our life is deep, right? Because we can go to jail and we can get domestic violence charges, right? And assault charges and felonies. But then 20 years later, everyone wants to know why the boys aren't interested in certain things. We're the productive black males, right? Where are all these people, right? We've created all of these kind of ways of thinking don't come out of nowhere, is all I'm saying.
And then you want them to be selective when doing it, right? It's like you've created this cycle, you've permeated this type of response of, yeah, you need, when this happens, you need to do this, but then you want them to turn it off when they go to school or when they're in a different atmosphere.
Oh yeah,
right? So you want them now.
Turn it off when your teacher criticizes you, though.
Absolutely, right? Nah, that's not the way it worked.
No,
So I absolutely I want to salute Chris Rock for being for practicing restraint, because for the reason that, you know, he tried his best to keep it together after this situation.
Right.
You know, I'm happy because, again, it could have gone even left. And that's another thing that we go over with clients, right? When they, you know, choose these type of actions or make these type of decisions, is that what happens again if Chris retaliates right there on spot? Now
right.
we got two people fighting on stage.
Right.
So it's a situation you don't know how the other person is going to react, because this is the action or path that you wanted, that Will wanted to do. You know, that could have gone even more left than it already had. So I want to give Chris, you know, I have to give him his props and acknowledge that he practiced restraint and went on with as best as he could, given the circumstances, you know, with the rest of the show. I mean, it's tough, man. And we're going to see rollout. Like you said, there's going to be a lot more apologies and people are going to be, you know, giving their statements and so on and so forth. But yeah, I didn't like this, man. I didn't like this from either one of them. Because again, they have been positive black representation in Hollywood. It's not that many of us. So, you know, they have a long history of, you know, presenting themselves as very well. This was absolutely not one of Will's finer moments. And so whatever's going on with that situation or whatever he was experiencing, I hope it gets better, man. I hope he's able to get the support that he needs. Because like we said, you know, there's something else going on there. So
don't worry.
We'll see.
There's one thing, I'm a Will Smith fan, but if there's one thing we don't have to worry about, is plenty of support. He was getting support right after he slapped him.
Yeah, he was getting support. But again, that was from a lot of us. We're not signing niggas bills. We're not sending the next movie deal. So, you know what I mean? Like, that's another thing. They were talking about, should he lose his Oscar? And because the Academy is taking, you know, I don't want him to lose his Oscar, because he worked hard for that, you know. Right. However, it is a situation where, again, when things like this take place and you are still a black man in America, okay, doesn't matter. I don't care how much money Will has. If the Academy wants to go in to say, oh, our code of ethics or our code of conduct, and they make a decision and say, hey, we're going to snatch this award from you because we're catching heat, right? Because people are asking the same questions as you are. Why was he allowed to go back to the seat? Why was this? Why was that?
Bro, think about it. And this is how sometimes when keeping it real goes wrong. It works against you.
That's
so
exactly
Chris Rock, so I'm not saying what I want to happen, but we're just talking practically, right?
Right.
So let's say Chris Rock files no charges because he said he's not going to file no charges, right?
Right.
Will Smith gets to go back to his seat. He gets a standing ovation after he wins his Oscar.
Yep.
So forget the codes of conduct then. It doesn't matter, right? But at the same time, if an usher goes on stage and smacks somebody next year, they're going to be dragged out in cuffs. So what are they going to do? They got to do something. I don't know what they're going to do.
And that's the thing. Like, you know, and I know what takes place. It's the bottom line, right? It's the bottom line starts to get affected, and people are now starting to put more pressure on the Academy, right? The Academy Awards themselves, and start asking these questions through investigation. And people, you know, for self-preservation for them, they'll go back and find some type of loophole, right? Some type of area in the code of conduct or whatever they have, and say, hey, well, you know what? We don't condone this. Therefore, we're going to strip Mr. Smith of his award. I don't want that to happen. However, if it does, and they find a way to finagle their way and say, hey, we're within our right to do so as the Academy Award because we presented and you didn't present or conduct yourself in a professional fashion, it would really suck, especially for Will, because it's like, listen, unfortunately, like we said, in the real world, there are consequences for actions.
Yeah.
And, he may not have the complexion for protection. I don't know. We're just being real, right? So we don't know how things are going to spin out. And and I know companies, corporations, Hollywood, whomever, right? The powers that be are going to do whatever they do to self-preserve, right? To make things right, even if it's retroactive.
Yeah, listen, man, and I'm not gonna ever be the one to say that judgment is always gonna be fair, right? But
Exactly.
I'm always gonna say that you can't hand people the rope and then get upset when you hanging from it. I mean, what do you want? You can't hang people the rope to hang you. Like, what did he do? Like, that's why I
Right.
said, like, there are people, regardless of how we feel about it. It might have been entertainment. People like, oh, he ain't slapping that hard. It's probably people in that room that felt unsafe.
Absolutely, they did. Absolutely.
Right. So at
And
that point,
phone calls get made and everything.
it's people in that room that feel unsafe. And that's it.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see. We'll see how this continues to play out. Speaking of anger and frustration, Jay, TikTok is once again sucking people in with a new viral trend that's becoming oddly addicting. All right. Now, fortunately, it's not one of those dangerous challenges that we talked about, like the crate challenge and anything else that the pod challenge and all these other different things.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it's a simple personality quiz known as the multi-dimensional anger test. All right. Now, this test claims to accurately rate your anger level compared with the general population. All right. So this, like a few weeks ago, this test started making its rounds around TikTok. When a TikToker first posted about her results to her followers, and she said that she didn't expect to receive the results that she got. She said, it's interesting how angry I am. So after sharing a screenshot of her test results, and it said, according to the research site known as IDR Labs, which is where the test is found at, she was found to have 34.2% more susceptible to anger than the average person. So since she shared her results on TikTok, her video has been viewed more over than 600,000 times, right? And so in
Mm-hmm.
response to that, hundreds of other people have gone on to take the test themselves and are actively sharing their own results and their comments all over TikTok, right? So to give people a little bit of backstory of what this test encompasses, it's like a quiz online and it's totally free to take. All right. It has a series of like 38 agree or disagree questions, right? So it makes it relatively quick to answer. So for example, one of the questions might be, I get angry when I have to take orders from someone else less capable than I. Agree or disagree. All right. Once you finish the test, you get the results regarding like various facets of anger compared to the population average, and you receive a percentage of how much more susceptible you are to anger than the average person. All right. So the test is based on part in research conducted by a psychologist named by Dr. Judith Siegel, whose work around trauma is relatively respected in the field of psychology. She developed the multi-dimensional anger inventory, which is the MAI, back in 1986. This assesses like several dimensions of anger, including frequency, duration, magnitude, mode of expression, hostile outlook, and just other different ranges. So when she developed the original inventory, the MAI, it was really done in part for helping researchers better understand like a connection between anger and coronary disease. So that's what it's loosely based off of, or that's where the information is coming from. So Jay, what's your take on this test that's making its way around TikTok that's telling people how angry they are?
I mean, I thought it was cool. I took it.
Okay.
Did you
How angry are you?
take it? Did you take it?
Nah, man, listen, nah, you don't want to. People don't need to know when the Hawk comes out, bro. When Bruce
Yeah,
Banner turns into
I'm less.
Hawk, you don't need to know that. This is incriminating. I'm not incriminating myself.
No, I took it. I'm less angry than I thought. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
for real? Okay.
How how was she? How much more? Now I'll tell you what my results are. I don't care. Um, what was how angry was she? Because I want to see if I was more angry than
He was
her.
34 for 34.2.
More than the average person.
Yeah.
All right, I think I was a little less than 10% more angry than the average person,
Look at
which is
you.
kind of which is
Look at
kind of
you.
fitting with where I'm at in my life, right? Because I don't have a lot of time. I have a lot of deadlines, and I can be, I gotta practice a lot of coping skills because I can find myself being a little bit irritable a lot of the time, right? But just in general, like listen, I thought it was a little like a fun thing to kind of take. It does remind you of a lot of just regular self assessments that we use.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I would say is that um, there is some research behind it, right? But what I think people got to understand about like these little personality tests that we see online and even in magazines, even if there is research behind it, not saying that we wouldn't even utilize them, right, as part of a psychological test battery, but that's the important part, right? It would be used, never would any of these tests be used singularly to determine whether a person is angry or has a specific diagnosis related to anger. We wouldn't use one test, right? It would
Right.
be combination of behavior, several tests, interview, all types of things. So again, it's a good tool to use, especially points you in certain areas where you might spike kind of on the scales. And definitely kind of like if you're open to share the results with people, a good like discussion tool. But it's one of many tools that's kind of used for treatment assessment.
Okay. All right. You know, I think with some of these self-report tests that start to blow up, and I don't know, I always get a little skeptical. I mean, I get it. And to dispel some of the inaccurate information that's been going around that I saw when reading up on it, it's not like, again, and the test wasn't directly created by Dr. Siegel, who I mentioned earlier. Like, even the website says it is, the IDR is not the equivalent of the MAI, right? So even
Mm-hmm.
though there's some research behind it, it's like it's not the same. And I get it, like the level of accessibility, because you can, like you said, you can go online, you can take it, it's ease. I think that's also partially responsible for the popularity of it. Like you said, it's self-report, so I get it. It's fun. It's a starter, right? It's a good possible indicator. Maybe, like you said, it could be possibly accurately kind of reflect, like, all right, this is maybe where I'm at, but it's just the starter part, right? And I think that's something that we have to really I think they have to get better at kind of putting like a disclaimer out there that this it really also has to do, since it's a self-report, it depends on how much self-awareness you have, right? Because if you aren't answering like in an honest manner, then it's gonna be all over the place. It's not gonna be valid. I think another thing with this is that we also have to is that these aren't culturally sensitive, right? Like they're also susceptible to bias. So if you're looking at like how a woman might express anger, is often viewed differently than how a man expresses anger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also culturally, right? So if you're talking about the general population, what population are they referring to, right? So what if it's someone of a different culture or different ethnicity, right? There's no culture considerations in the part. So I think kind of it's fun, at the same time, take it with a grain of salt. Because again, like you kind of briefly mentioned, the assessment batteries and inventories that we use, there's cultural considerations in it, right? That's what also goes into it. So you're actually getting a valid and reliable test. Um, so like some cultures might consider some other different expressions as anger, as far as how people might, answer the self-report question. So, and again, this is not the replacement or the equivalent of therapy, right? It shouldn't be a situation of like, oh yeah, I did this. I'm not that angry. I'm cool. Like no, like there's still you
I
should
mean,
still see that that health professional.
that's why I didn't even like respectfully, like for this, I wouldn't even talk about culture. Like just saying me, like that's why I ain't talk about culture, validity. It doesn't matter because if you're taking a test online or in a magazine and you're interpreting it yourself, it's for fun. You know what I'm saying? It's not for any diagnostic or assessment purposes. It's not real. It's like essentially like when you open a fortune cookie, right? Like or when you read one of these horoscopes about being born in August, right? Like I'm not trying to be more likely it's gonna contain a lot of general information and a lot less specific information. It's just the nature of how these things are built. So again, anybody who's taking anything that where they're gonna self-report and self-interpret,
Right.
just look at it, like you look at any test you might take on the back of a whether it be a Wheaties box or Cosmopolitan.
You showing your age on the Wheaties box. You know that, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm old, so it's all right.
Yeah, but absolutely. Yeah, don't take the test too seriously. If the results do cause you to have any feelings of discomfort, consider reaching out, to either your support system or, a mental health professional. Don't go too far down the rabbit hole with these tests because some people do, Jay. Some people they'll get it and they think that, oh well, this is it. Like, oh, this determines I'm good or I'm super angry. Like, let's get some additional information there. So,
No, you're right about that.
but yeah, I'm gonna take it, man. I'm gonna tell you next episode what my results were.
All right.
You know,
Just know watch how you say it to me, man, because I'm 10% more angry than your average guy.
hey man, listen, as long as you don't go to work and start Will Smithing people, bro, we're in good shape.
Word.
All right. So we talked a little bit about hair earlier. And so the House of Representatives passed legislation last week on the 18th, right? In a vote of 235 to 189 that would ban hair-related discrimination. All right. So the Crown, which is an acronym, CROWN, creating a respectful and open world for natural hair act. All right, was first introduced to Congress in March of 2019, which prohibits prejudicial. I'm sorry. Treatment towards individuals on the basis of their hair texture and hairstyle. Right. So this is going to be the first step on a federal level needed to officially get the bill signed into a law. All right. And the bill is now on its way to the Senate. So, just gonna give people a brief history lesson. So historically and unfortunately, people of African descent have been deprived of educational and employment opportunities, had consequences taken against them just because they adorn their natural and protective hairstyles, which can be, curled, worn in locks, cornrows, twists, braids, etc. Right? So the personal style and grooming choices have had like a negative impact or with employment consequences and issues and created issues in the workplace for Black people in ways that unfortunately are not, consistent for white individuals. So for example, in a clinical or hospital setting, you may have, Black nurses who are told that they have to cut their hair for sake of infection control, whereas their white peers might be told to merely just tie their hair up, right, or tie it up in a bun. Um, there's also been profiling and policing through hair. So in various professional areas, you'll have people of color that are threatened or with dismissal or being fired or being called looking unprofessional when they show up with their hair in a natural state. So, if this is passed through the Senate, the Crown Act could potentially rectify the ongoing discrimination that Black people have been, facing just for wearing their hair in natural styles. And so it will also add legal consequences for schools and employers alike. What is what are your thoughts about this, Jack? Now that this is, gaining some
Um,
momentum and it's on its way to the Senate.
yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to say about this. I mean, kind of wanted to highlight it because it's an ongoing issue. I know they still got to vote on it in the Senate, so it's something we can kind of circle back towards. But again, like I just think it's an important issue that people need to pay attention to, right? Because people have either had to alter their hair, right, to enter certain professions or places of employment, or you have to think that they've avoided them altogether, right? And it may seem like a small thing, like hair and this and that, but you got to think about younger kids too, right? So when children are kind of making these ideas are starting to solidify as in middle school and elementary school, you know, to tell a child certain things that I've heard when I was in 6, 7 years old, right? Like you can't be a lawyer if you have dreadlocks, right?
Yeah.
Now it's a little bit easier to believe, right? One of my that it's in that's not true, right? Like one of my best friends is a federal prosecutor. His dreads is just as long as mine, right? But when I was started to grow my hair, that's one of the lines that you heard people say all the time. Is, oh, you ain't gonna be able to get a job, right? That's a very bold and salient statement to say to somebody. You're not going to be able to get a job. You're not going to be able to be a police officer. You're not going to be able to be a lawyer. You're not going to be able to get through that medical school interview with your hair.
Right.
That's a big thing, right? And I think as a child, or as a younger person, your reaction is not going to be to go into activism, right? Your reaction is going to be like, well, I guess I don't belong in that profession and to do something else. You know what I mean? Or to just develop the total opposite negative feelings towards anybody who's in that profession or who changes themselves to be in it, go through that door, right? So, you know, of course that and then I just think the overall perception of like natural hair is not professional. The with the legislation attached to it, you know, and the legal penalties, I think it can help there, because again, you know, we have this idea, and again, we studying for our licensing. So that's, I think that was Gordon Allport that was saying, you know,
Look at you. Look at you.
hey man, he was
Look
just
at
talking
you.
about when
Yeah,
you're trying to change
talk to him,
people's,
Jay. Talk to him.
when you're trying to change people's attitudes, you know, the thought could be to try to change their minds first, right? But legislation can change, can come first, right? Before
Right.
changing people's attitudes. That's the general idea of it, right? So in this case, man, like sometimes that's what we have to do, you know. So I'm not gonna say much on that. Just kind of, this was a kind of, you know, something I just wanted to bring to people's attention, but it's important, you know.
Absolutely, it's important, and the scenario that you just painted, in which, like you said, individuals from a young age want to go into, like you mentioned, whether it be business, whether it be law, whether it be medicine, and to be told at a very early age, oh, you're not going to be able to wear, you're not going to be able to wear your dreads. You're going to have to cut your hair. You're going to have to do this, right? When they're just starting to maybe go towards that path, or that's discouraging. You know, I mean, that is, it's like, and like you mentioned, you can start to grow or resentment towards those individuals or towards that field, or like it's putting you in a position that you're censoring yourself, right?
Right.
We've talked about expression. We've talked about, you know, just being in a situation where you're able to, you know, have that self-disclosure, right? And self-disclosure is your hair. It's a big part of it. It's a big part of your identity. It's a big part of who you are. And if you're told that, oh, well, you know what, you're not going to be able to, you know, accomplish this goal or this dream that you have just based off your hair. Nah, it's like putting someone where they have to make a sacrifice, a part of them. They have to sacrifice either a part of themselves or they have to let go of that dream, right? Because they're
Right.
not willing to compromise. So, you know, that's discouraging. And it's, you know, those phrases, it's discriminatory language, man. It's like, oh, you're not going to be able to do this. You have to, you know, I always felt for individuals in those situations, male or female, you know, and this bill is long overdue, right? I mean, the fact that there needs to be a law that bans discrimination against people's hair is mind-blowing. But that's where we're at, right? We have to actually put something in paper. We have to put something, that says, hey, you can't say that, right? Or you can't hold this against this particular employee. We have to put in
I
safeguards.
mean,
Like that's mind-blowing, but that's where we are, unfortunately.
it's crazy, but listen, man. It's things that we do, right? Like I grew up with the expectation, like when I was a young boy, my mother would tell me, like, listen, if you want to have your hair, you got to be twice as good as everybody else,
Right.
right? So that's the sentiment in our culture, right? If you want to have your hair, if you want to have your tattoos, if you want to do whatever, then you got to be twice as good. So unfortunately, we've been here a couple times. Everybody knows my view. I'm not saying it's fair, but I do agree we got to be twice as good.
All right. And so the whole continue to putting safeguards just so we can be ourselves continues. So we'll see. I hope this gets passed and we can move forward so the folks that are coming in after us don't have those same worries and they have the protection they need so they can accomplish, their goals. All right, Jack.
Yep. Back to that.
2 landlords in Queens, New York, are sending a message to their neighborhood about their tenants that they state owe them money, right? They said that they owe them $17,000 in back rent. All right. So they took it upon themselves to post a very large banner, which can be seen all the way from the Belt Parkway, right? So you know what the sign says? You ready for this? All right. It says,
all right, yo.
It says, my tenants on the first floor are not paying rent. Right. And it's like right above the first floor rental. Okay. It was also featured on TikTok. And the video's gotten like over 14,000 likes. So that's where we are. All right. So what's been going on in New York, along with in a lot of different states, it's over 200,000 eviction cases, right, are pending in the city after the whole pandemic protection in the state's eviction situation was created, and it created like a historic backlog. So a lot of landlords are unable or are like fighting it in court to try to get residents out that haven't paid rent and so on and so forth. So the landlords that put up this sign say that they see this is is the next best tactic, right? They see this is the only recourse that they have. And so even though the eviction situation ended in January, it gave latitude for renters that are suffering from hardships from the pandemic, for a lot of them to remain in their units. And it's also allowed them to kind of put, renters to put the brakes on the eviction cases, and they're able to claim hardship without having to prove it. So the landlord said it's uncomfortable that they have to hang these up, but we're $20,000 uncomfortable. And so they think that the sign is very minor. What do you,
Right.
what's your take on this, Jack?
Listen, man. All right. First of all, it's an extreme reaction on both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, because just reading about the situation, this all started because I think they said that they're renting like a 3 or 4 bedroom, right? They said they hadn't raised the rent in like 9 years,
right,
or something like that, and then they raised it by $100, right? So they raised it by 100. Client didn't like that, refused to pay the 100. Then the landlords refused to take the 1,800 of the 1,900. So they're just like, we're gonna take nothing, right? So it's an extreme reaction on both sides, right? Number one, refusing a $100 hike after 9 years of no rental increase is crazy, okay? Because that's $9 a year. And then public humiliation resorting to that is crazy. But I gotta be honest, like I at the end of the day, like we talking about bills, like, and it's money owed, so I'm not justifying, but having a pink slip on your door is humiliating too, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, they wouldn't have the thing on their door if they had paid the bills. Now, if I was the landlord, I would take the $1,800 and sue them for the rest later, right? Or take the $1,800, start build, because 1,800 is still not the whole rent. So if they give you 1,800, you still haven't had a rental payment. So I don't know how that works in terms of starting the process, but I would have took the 18 or the 19. You know what I mean? Now, so again, I think it was extreme on both sides, but ultimately I got to side with the landlord because they need to get their money. You know, you can't live for free, pandemic or not. What did you think?
I don't like it, Jay. I don't like it. This is
You don't
nasty,
like the
man.
sign, or you don't
I
like
don't
the?
like the sign at all. I don't like it. I don't
Okay.
like the measures that they're taking. It's nasty. This is bullying. You're shaming. This is I get it, right? I don't as a tenant, you entered a contract, you signed a lease. In order for you
Mm-hmm.
have to pay, right? Like you said, you can't live there for free. I don't know if these particular tenants have fallen on hardship due to the pandemic or whatever's taking place. I don't know.
Well, they talked about it in the article. They said they have the money. They
Well,
just don't want to pay 19. They want to
right.
pay 18.
So and that's a situation where, all right, either you have a conversation with the tenants and say, listen, you're backed, right? And much. So it sounds like also, okay, this might go a little bit more than, all right, we don't appreciate the hike, right? In that. Because this is a lot of money that's been building up. If you're at $17,000, this has been quite a few months, right? That this has been taking
Yeah.
place. And so again, you do have some individuals that took advantage of the pandemic protections where it was like, hey, they can't force us, let's not pay, so on and so forth, which is unfortunate because there were a lot of people that needed that protection that fell on hard times financially. I think the first step is, okay, we need to work something out, right? You're let's Like you said, if you're offering this, let's get on the payment plan. So at least you're getting something. Also, it's a situation where, okay, well, if that's not working, the lease was created for a reason. So there's, like you said, there's some legal ramifications and maybe some channels that you can take. Like you said, you fight it in court, and for the time being, you have to give us something. Um, I feel like this kind of gets in more the nastier part, because what are you getting accomplished? Because now you're definitely not going to get your money now because you didn't put the tenants out there, and if they're still participating in this pandemic protection or and whatever cover that gives them, it's just gotten to a whole nastier extent, right? And I've never been a subscriber to, like, all right, we're just gonna put people's financial business and things out there, especially on blast, right? Now you're gonna put it on TikTok. That's nasty. I think that's just like really low end and just trying to shame somebody into getting that. And obviously it hasn't produced the desired results, right? The sign is up there, you're on TikTok, people are saying, oh yeah, they're getting likes and commenting, but it's not
Mhm.
like it's working because you were still in the same situation. So at this
I
point,
mean,
it's like,
look,
all right, well, do we, is again just fight it out in court, or do we open up the channels of communication and say, listen, you have to give us something, and some rather, I don't know.
I hope, and I hate that I got to be the one to take this position, but you know as well as I do, bro. When you're talking landlord, tenant, when a person has decided that they don't want to pay, there is tenants have a lot of protections,
They
right?
do.
Like there've been articles that have been written about people who will serially move into apartments, file false claims, never pay because and it's a cycle because they know how many months they cannot pay rent before they can be evicted and yada yada yada. Like it's articles going back to the beginning of the so I'm gonna be very honest. Like, unless we're talking about a job being taken away from somebody, um I have limited sympathy for somebody who doesn't pay their most salient bill, which is a roof over your head, right? And by this article, that's why I said the fault lies somewhere in between, because they wanted to pay the 18 out of the 19. The landlord didn't want to take the rent. You know what I'm saying? Now, people may fault me with this stance, but it's like hanging a sign outside their window. Even the landlord kind of said in the article, he was like, well, what other recourse do I have? Like, court is in 6 months and I still got to pay the mortgage and I got somebody living rent free downstairs. So a little, the other way to look at it would be, what's humiliation? Like, what's a sign outside your window when you getting $1,800 worth of rooms for free every month? Like, that's a small price to pay. Some people might say. Now, on a level, like on a human being level, humanity level, is it mean? Yes. You know what I'm saying? But think about it. PSE&G don't worry about being mean when they cut your water off, right? The sheriff don't worry about being mean when they lock you out in front of your neighbors. Your visa doesn't worry about being mean when you're out on a date with that beautiful woman and your car gets declined. You see where I'm going? Foot Locker doesn't worry about being mean when they tell you, sorry, sir, or Red Lobster, anywhere else, you don't have enough money, so please leave the store. It's capitalism at the end of the day. And I get it, you know what I'm saying? But, and I'm not saying they're right, but I'm just saying it's a personal decision, right? Because some people are going to tell you when a person gets evicted, you should not put their things outside in front of the house. There's a better way to do it. And other people are going to say,
yeah. Well,
right?
Let me ask you this though. So as a landlord, right? Like you said, you haven't gone up in rent in 9-10 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If they're willing to pay you the $1,800 as opposed to the $1,900, and all right, they haven't paid and so on and so forth, right? And they got the protection of the pandemic or whatever legal situation. Do you take the $1,800 and say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna take this for now, as opposed to getting nothing, and then as far as litigation, back channels, whenever you have the ability where things in your favor, do you go after the additional 100?
If it's me as the landlord, because I know how many limited power landlords have, I take the 1,800 and then I don't renew their lease and they leave my property.
That's what I'm saying, right? So you got to kind of take, I don't know what, went into or what contributed to the hike. I mean, I know it's, inflation is happening everywhere and everybody has to cover things, but that's my thought process. I'm going to take the 1,800 right now. And like you said, later on down the line, I have to play the long game, because right now, short term, you have the litigation, the protection, or whatever on your side. But that doesn't mean that whenever we renew the lease, I have to renew it with you because I own the property. So
I'm not renewing.
Yeah, I'm not renewing it with you. That's cool. Yeah. So I don't have to renew the lease. And whenever that time comes, whether it's this year, next year, oh, absolutely. I'm not renewing that. And when things are in my favor, I can come after you later for whatever the 100 that you didn't pay and stuff. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you're willing for things to get backed up on the 17,000, 20,000, and you don't want to take it because they don't want to give you the 1,900. Take the 1,800. I'll get you later on. I got you. And you know what I mean? Like, you're already in violation of the lease. So that's what I'm saying. That's just my thought process, bro.
I mean, I'm with you, man, but they wanted to handle it different, bro. I don't know.
The banner, hey, man.
Yo, listen, man. Listen, people are not going to react to stuff the way we thought. If people thought was going to react the way we thought, we wouldn't be talking about landlords hanging signs over people's over people's rooms and Will Smith smacking people at the Oscars, bro. Come on.
Listen, man. I can't wait to hear Chris Rock with his new stand-up, bro. This is I want to.
Oh, man. I already got.
Yeah. Like, this is
crazy, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be wild. All right, Jay. Anything else before we get out of here, bro?
Nah, bro. As usual, we want to thank everybody. Takes the time to listen. Really appreciate it. Please continue to comment on the videos, like, share, and as always, remember to prioritize your mental health.
Absolutely. Couldn't say it better myself, my friend. All right, Jay. Get at you next week, my friend.
All right, bro. No doubt, man. I'm gonna hit you like tomorrow or the next day, man. I gotta talk to you about something. Ain't nothing big. I'm gonna hit you up.
All right, cool.
All right, bro.
All
All right, later, man. All right.